Now, I personally think that in today's video, we are taking a close look at one of the most exciting trail running shoes of the year, if not ever, and it's great to see this level of innovation within our sport. It actually comes from the guys at NNormal, so they're a collaboration between Mallorcan shoe brand Camper and world-renowned Spanish mountaineer and trail runner Kilian Jornet, and it is their very innovative Kboix. Now, I can hear you all saying, okay, Lloyd, that shoe looks just like all the other shoes within the NNormal trail running shoe lineup, but this one comes with a party trick. So you can actually switch in and out the midsole setups to give the shoe a very different feel and performance. And I think you'll agree that is a very interesting concept and pretty clever stuff. So let's dive into the video and tell you more about this exciting new innovative trail running shoe from NNormal. Welcome back, folks, and welcome back to another first impressions video here at the channel. But it is going to be a first impressions video with a slight difference, but I'll tell you more about that later in the video. But thanks for tuning in again. I'm Lloyd Purvis and this is Run for Adventure. Now, if it's your first time at the channel, then thanks for joining us. Really hope you enjoy the video. And what we normally do in our first impressions is I'll give you a bit of information about the shoes, so things like price, weight, stack height, and so on. Then I'll go into the construction and break it down in a bit more detail before lacing them up, grabbing the cameras and bringing you all out on my first run. Then we'll get back to the studio and we'll wrap the video up with a quick conclusion on how the shoes have performed. So let's start off with a few facts and figures first, and the Kboix retails here in the UK for £200, and for that you get the modular shoe, but you also get to choose 2 of the available 3 midsole setups. So first up, you get the soft midsole, and that's been constructed out of a soft EVA supercritical foam for those easier, slower pace sort of recovery runs. You've also got a reactive midsole, which is all about speed, and it's composed of a TPU supercritical foam with high levels of rebound. And then last but not least, we've also got the bounce midsole, which utilises a PIBA supercritical foam for ultimate comfort when you're hitting the trails for those longer efforts. And the guys from NNormal have actually sent me a pair of the soft and the reactive midsoles, so they're the 2 that we're going to be testing out in today's video. As far as weight goes, the modular shoe on its own weighs in at a pretty light 264 grams in a UK 9.5, and you can see what I mean. This modular shoe doesn't have the midsole in it, and I can pretty much roll it up, but however, when you do put the midsoles in, I popped it back on the scales with the soft midsole and it weighed in at 348 grams. And then when I put in the slightly lighter React midsole, it came in at 342. And I've got to be honest, it's a much heavier shoe than I was expecting. I really did expect it to be a lot lighter than that, especially when Kilian has been heavily involved in the development. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that weight crosses over to performance on today's run. Unfortunately, I searched high and low for some stack heights and some heel offsets, but they are literally nowhere to be found. However, the midsole setup does look very similar to that on NNormal's Tamir 2.0, and that runs off an 8mm heel offset. So I would say there's somewhere around a 6 to 8mm drop, and stack heights, I don't know, I couldn't find them anywhere, like I said. Okay, so I just wanted to jump in quickly and let you all know that I'm a bit of an idiot. So I said earlier in the video that I'd searched high and low for the heel offset and the stack heights of the midsole, and I couldn't find them anywhere. Well, I got back from the run, I was playing around with the shoes, I took the midsole out, and there they are. The stats are actually inside the upper themselves on a little label on the medial side of the heel. So those stats are, this is a 6mm heel offset. We've got a stack height of 28mm at the heel, 22mm under the forefoot. And interestingly enough, it also says that the outsole is a 4mm lug depth, but I'm sure I saw 3.5mm somewhere on the NNormal website. But there you go, it's a 4mm lug depth. And there's all the stats that we were after. They're in the shoe, hiding from me, but let's get back to the video. As far as the shoe's construction goes, NNormal have gone for a lightweight matrix Evo jackered material for the bulk of the construction, and that's to make sure that the upper is light, breathable and super durable at the same time. And this has been achieved with matrix using a woven material made out of individually coated polyamide and Kevlar threads. And I've always been a fan of the matrix sort of material in the shoes that have used it in their uppers, and I just think it gets better and better over the years. So this means that the Kboix should hold up to those tough, challenging trail miles well. The tongue is gusseted inside the upper, however it is very thin in design, so pretty much zero padding. So I've got my fingers crossed that that's going to sit nice and comfortable across the top of my foot today. However, we do get a moderate level of padding around the ankle collar and in the heel cup. A pretty standard looking lacing system with some overlays around the lace eyelets there for a bit of extra durability, and we've got a bit of reinforcement up front from an added toe bumper, which is a feature I always like to have in my trail running shoes. And then if I hold the shoes a bit closer to the camera, you might be able to see that we've actually got stitching connecting the outsole to the upper just to give the shoe a good level of durability. And this is something that we don't see very often when it comes to today's modern running shoes. And then, like I've already mentioned, on the bottom of the Kboix we get that super sticky Vibram Mega Grip light base rubber, so they should work really well if we pick up any rocky or wet rocky trails today. The plan for today's first run is I've formulated a 4-mile loop, and we're going to head out on that loop with the soft midsoles in first to see how they perform, and then in between I'm going to pop home, pop in the reactive midsoles. We're going to run that same 4-mile loop just to see how different the midsole setups feel and perform over that duration. So without further ado, let's get these laced up and let's get running. Okay, so we are 3 miles down on the first 4-mile loop. Got a hill here, so we're going to walk and talk. And I've got to say it, I'm running with the soft midsole first, and it does feel nice and plush underfoot. And I was worried initially that I was going to feel the sort of edges on the midsole because it does come up quite high, but I'm not feeling them at all. And like I say, it feels nice and comfortable underfoot, and that was one of the things that put me off running in the Tamir. Just, I felt that the midsole was a bit firm for my liking, whereas this definitely offers me a bit more plushness and a bit more comfort. The one thing I would say though is I went true to size, so I went with the UK 9.5, which I wear in most of my running shoes, and the length feels good, but that upper does feel quite shallow in the toe box and at the midfoot once I've put that deep midsole in. So maybe half a size up to a UK 10 would have been a better idea. It might have given me a bit more volume in the upper. No problem at all today, but I think if I was going long in the shoe and my feet expanded a bit over time, they might feel a little bit constricted and a bit tight. But anyway, let's get this first loop done. Then we're going to get back to the studio. We're going to switch the soft midsole out for the react midsole. We're going to head back out on the loop and do another 4 miles. And the other good news is the hamstring's feeling even better today, so onwards and upwards. Right, here we go then. Back out on the same 4-mile loop, but with the reactive midsole this time. So let's see how the two midsoles compare. Out of breath up this hill. Okay, so 3.3 miles down on the second 4 mile loop, and it has been a really interesting test. So the first thing I noticed when I put this reactive midsole in is obviously it is a bit firmer, still feels pretty plush and pretty cushioned if I'm honest, but what I really did notice is I think there's less depth of cushioning in the reactive midsole compared to the soft midsole. So it does feel like I've got a bit more room and a bit more volume in the upper, and I'm actually really liking that feel. Now don't get me wrong, this shoe is still very narrow, so quite narrow in the toe box, and we've got that shallow volume at the midfoot, and I really do think you have to have a pretty narrow foot shape to run in these. I think if you had any width to your foot, then you're really gonna struggle, and not just because the Modular shoe's narrow. If you think of those midsole inserts, they've got quite sort of high walls to them, and if your foot doesn't sit exactly within that midsole and you're rubbing on the outer edge, then I really do think you could have some problems. But like I said, we are 3.3 miles down, so we've got a short run back to the studio, so let's get back there, let's switch the cameras on, and let's wrap this video up with a quick conclusion. Well, that was good fun and something very different, because I'm pretty sure I've never popped home mid-run and switched out the midsoles in my trail running shoes before, and it was actually a really good test. And the loop turned out to be 4.5 miles, so ended up clocking up 9 miles in total by the time I got home. So really good distance in a brand new running shoe out there on its first run, and also a very good test for my left hamstring. And I got to say, it felt good. Seems to be improving with every run, so that's got to be a positive thing, right? But let's talk all about the Modular shoe first. And before we went out on the run, I did have my doubts about this very thin gusseted tongue design, but I shouldn't have worried. I actually felt very comfortable across the top of my foot, and the laces didn't pull through it, which I have sometimes suffered with in the past when I've run in shoes with very little padding in the tongue. But I'm not normally a fan of it, but it actually worked pretty good out there today. No rubbing, no irritation or anything like that, which you can sometimes get when it's your first run in a brand new shoe. So I would always recommend keeping that first run relatively short. 5 or 6 miles tends to be a really good distance, because it gives you enough time to feel how the shoe's going to fit and perform out there, but you're not going to run too long in it, which could lead to issues. The uppers seem to give me a good lockdown around my midfoot and a nice secure hold in the heel, and Normal have actually gone for these notched laces, and I think they really help when it comes to the lockdown, but I also think they helped keep the shoe locked down. So the laces didn't work loose throughout the run. However, I did mention it when we were out there on the route that it does seem to be a very narrow fitting upper with a pretty shallow toe box and a midfoot. Now, I haven't got a wide foot shape, and actually I'm pretty narrow in foot shape, and this upper still felt pretty tight. I actually think a UK 10 would have been a better option, and that would have given me a little bit more length in the toe, but also a bit more width and volume, and I would definitely need that if I was going to run the Kboix over longer distances. So if you are thinking about them, I would recommend going up half a size, and if you do think you've got a pretty wide foot shape, or you just like a nice wide toe box with lots of wiggle room, then I would say these are probably not the trail shoes for you. As far as the two midsoles go, they do feel and perform differently. So the soft one definitely offered me more depth of cushioning, but I still had good ground feel when I picked up the trails, and actually felt very comfortable on all the terrain I ran today, even on the short sections of road. And I'd actually say that the soft midsole felt very comfortable on the hard stuff. And then when I switched it out for the reactive midsole, straight away I felt a bit closer to the ground, a bit more connected, but it still gave me a comfortable ride. So I don't think there's a massive difference between the two levels of cushioning. But the shoes did feel a bit more responsive, a bit more nimble with that reactive midsole inside. And also, like I mentioned on the run, it felt like I had a bit more volume and a bit more width in the upper as well, after feeling a little bit restricted with that deeper, softer midsole. However, I think this would all be rectified if I just went up half a size to a UK 10. You can see there on the footage that wasn't the most challenging of routes today. So this Vibram Mega Grip rubber outsole with the 4mm lug handled everything with ease, no problems at all. Obviously, with it only being a 4mm lug trail shoe, this isn't an option you're going to pick out for running a super muddy, boggy route. And I would say that they're more of a sort of dry trail, spring, summer, autumn trail running option. And I also wanted to mention, they seem to offer me really good underfoot protection, and I'm pretty sure there's not a rock plate system worked into this midsole, but a couple of times I picked up some very sharp, stony trails and I felt very comfortable and well protected underfoot. The one thing I would mention is maybe I'd like to see them a little bit lighter in the future, especially when you're using them with that reactive midsole setup, because you know, if that's been designed for running quickly on technical trails, quicker training sessions, or maybe even race day, 342 grams in a UK 9.5 is quite heavy, you know. I would actually like to see the Kboix maybe under 300 grams when you're using that reactive setup. Now, I'm sure the guys at NNormal have been working super hard trying to keep that weight down, and with it being a modular concept shoe, obviously there's a lot of rubber on the bottom of it, and that's always one of the heavier elements when it comes to running shoe construction. But all in all, it was a really exciting run today, and it was great to test out a trail shoe very different to anything that I've ever tested in the past. And I've really got to take my hat off to the brand for coming up with this very innovative modular shoe concept. And who knows, you know, maybe we're looking at the future of running shoes right here, and we're going to see lots of other running brands developing shoes with, you know, midsoles that are switchable. And you never know, in the future we might even see a trail running shoe where you can change the outsole design for drier summer trails or wet, boggy, muddy winter trails. I've heard a few people say that they really struggle to get the midsoles in and out of this modular shoe, and it can be a bit tricky, but when you think about it, that midsole's obviously got to fit very precise and be super secure, because the last thing you want is to start running and then it's slipping and sliding all over the place. That wouldn't be good for anyone. And to be fair, once you've done it a few times, it does get easier and there is a bit of a knack to it. But I'm really interested to see how the whole thing holds up to wear and tear, because you know, you're constantly taking those midsoles in and out of the shoe, and it does take quite a bit of force to get them out and to put them in. So it's going to be interesting to see how they hold up, but I guess only time will tell. I know this type of modular shoe system is something that Kilian's been working on for a long time, ever since his days when he was running for Salomon, and it never really saw the light of day. So fair play to Camper for forming the partnership so that innovations like this can exist in the marketplace. And I'm sure there was quite a few late nights, lots of problem solving, and a fair bit of stress to bring these shoes to life. And you know, I'm really glad they did. I'm glad I got to test it and it didn't disappoint. And I've got to say a massive thanks to NNormal for sending out a pair for me to test and review. And that brings today's video to an end. Really hope you enjoyed hearing about this groundbreaking trail running shoe from the NNormal brand. If you have enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Only takes a second to do by clicking on the little red box down there in the corner. But best of all, it is completely free and it's not going to cost you a penny, but it really does help when it comes to the crazy world of the YouTube algorithm. If you've got any questions about the Kboix at all, please feel free to get them in the comments below and I'll try and get back to them as soon as possible. But for now guys, thanks for watching. It's always appreciated. We'll be back soon, and as always, stay safe and keep on running. It can be a bit tricky, but obviously it's got to be very not just because the modular shoe's narrow, but if you think the midsole has that high sort of ridge to it, and you know, if your foot was wide and you're not quite fitting within the lines of them, oh, you stupid bird.